afternoon. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I have 5:30. Today is Wednesday, April 21st, and we're meeting here at the Texas Room of Achieve High School. Today, we're having a board workshop, and because of health and safety concerns of COVID, we still have the option of meeting in person or online. And if anybody wants to follow the meeting along, they can go to our website, McAllen ISD.com, and follow along on the links there to join us. We don't have any public speakers today, but if anybody's interested in approaching the board and speaking to the board, you can always sign up on our website or through the superintendent secretary or our board trustee secretary. Before I proceed to turn over to Dr. Gonzalez and his team, let me just acknowledge in our room who we have. As far as trustees, to my right, I have Trustee Alicedo. I have Trustee Florina, welcome. To my left, I have Trustee Vela and Trustee Suarez, welcome. And to my immediate left, I have Trustee Sandoval. Hello, sir. And I don't know if Mr. Spots is able to join us yet. I don't see him online. Yeah, I don't think so because they do have the camera on us on the room. So either way, let the record reflect. We have 6 board members present here, our Texas Room. And we don't have public comments, which is item 2 on the agenda. So we're going to go to item 3, which discussion of 2020-21 budget. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. The Texas Education Agency and Board Policy CE require districts to prepare a budget of anticipated expenditures and revenues before June 19th and approved by the Board of Trustees by June 30th. Mrs. Richards will present the 4th budget workshop for the 2021-2022 budget. Ms. Richards.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, Mr. Alvarado, and Board of Trustees. During this 4th budget workshop, I will be joined by Mr. Kevin O'Hanlon with O'Hanlon, Demerith, and Castillo attorneys and counselors at law, and Mr. Todd Miller, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. As we develop the budget for next year, we've evaluated a declared disaster opportunity as it relates to Hurricane Hannah. In addition to federal funding the district will receive through the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, also referred to as ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. I'll also present an updated budget summary, and Mr. Miller will provide a human resources update. We'll begin with Hurricane Hannah. Hurricane Hannah was a Category 1 hurricane, and it made landfall in South Texas on July 25th, 2020. Governor Greg Abbott declared an emergency disaster on that same date. This provides an opportunity for the district to declare a disaster for tax year 2021. Damage incurred by McAllen ISD included 9 athletic scoreboards at the high schools, the baseball field fence at McAllen High School, canopy damage at various locations, roof leaks at the Crockett Annex, Memorial High School, and Rowe High School, light pole damage at the District Operations Office, storage shed damage at McAllen High School, and police screen damage at the Middleton High School. As a result of the weather-related district damage incurred by Hurricane Hannah, we're asking the trustees to acknowledge the governor's disaster declaration. In doing so, we're providing 2 scenarios on how this could impact state funding. This first scenario assumes a 3.5 property value growth subject to additional tax compression and assumes a 96% collection rate. In this scenario, there would be an increase in the total tax rate. Our current tax rate is $1.1386, and this scenario is projecting a total tax rate increase of 3.3 cents to 1.17. This would result in a net gain to the district of $4,829,501. Now, what does this mean to our taxpayers? If you have a home valued at $100,000, you would then claim your homestead exemption, which would reduce the adjusted value to $75,000. The annual taxes based on the current tax rate of $1.1386 would be $853.95. With a tax rate of $1.1716, that annual tax would be $878.70. This would result in an increase of $24.75, and the monthly effect would be $2.06. The second scenario also assumes a 3.5% property value growth. It would be subject to an additional tax compression, and it assumes a 96% collection rate. In this scenario, the total tax rate would remain the same at $1.1386, and it would result in an estimated net gain of $460,835. Administration is recommending scenario 2. There is the expectation that the property values will exceed the 2.5% property growth set by the state. This scenario does not exceed the current total tax rate. It does not result in an additional tax cost to our taxpayers as a result of the tax rate. It allows us to maintain current revenue streams and tax collections and state funding when combined. And it requires the Board of Trustees to acknowledge and approve the declared disaster resolution due to Hurricane Hannah for tax year 2021. Mr. O'Hanlon will review the draft of the declared disaster. Mr. O'Hanlon?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us.
All right. Basically, this is we've done resolutions similar to this resolution before. Should be familiar with the district. We've done this on multiple occasions. Unfortunately, the McAllen ISD has had several disasters over the last decade. It's a shame y'all are familiar with this, but there it is. Basically, the resolution acknowledges that there's some blanks on there because we don't know when you're going to set your budget, but it acknowledges the governor's declaration of the disaster on July 25th, 2020, and a couple of extensions of that. There has to be a request for disaster relief as part of the statute 26.08A. There was, that's referenced in here. And the district has to have sustained damages, which it did, and that's referenced in the resolution. There is you just heard the list of specific effects with respect to that shows that you did in fact receive damage. Based on that, you have the right under 26.08A, which is on the second page, there's the reference, to recognize a disaster. And what that allows you to do is to, there are two kinds of compression under House Bill 3. One is Tier 1 compression, and there's two kinds of that, which is Tier 1 state compression, which forces down your rate, and there's Tier 1 local compression, which is what Ms. Richards just referred to, in which case you may have a local compression rate that's pushed down in excess of the state rate, depending on the property value growth. Then there's Tier 2 compression. Tier 2 compression applies the same principle. As you get wealthier, your tax rate's supposed to go down. But in this case, if there's a disaster declaration, you can maintain your top Tier 2 tax rate. Your Tier 2 tax rate is the highest rate that you had prior to the House Bill 3 kind of reset. In this case, up to 17 cents. The McAllen ISD has never set a Tier 2 tax rate of 17 cents. The highest that y'all did was 15.5. But the compression rate would have applied to the 15.5 cents from last year as your value grows up, that you'd have had to reduce it by the same 3% and whatnot based on the growth. With the disaster declaration, you don't have to do that. You can levy the full 15.5 cents that is previously authorized by a TRE election. And that's what this resolution does. Basically says, if you adopt it, then you will be setting a tier 2 tax rate on top of your tier 1 tax rate that's going to be set on that. We think it's going to be, well, the tier 2 tax rate will be 15.5%. We're not exactly sure what your tier 1 rate is because we haven't done the local compression. We won't have that until the end of the month, until we get the certified estimates out of the appraisal district. So we think you'll be able to go up to 104.5 based on our calculations, which would be the same rate as that you had last year for total tax rate.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. O'Hanlon. Does that conclude your report?
Yes.
Okay.
I wrote an opinion letter that should be in the package that explains the legal niceties of it, but it's basically what I just said.
Okay, thank you so much. We look forward to you joining us. There may be some questions at the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Oh, be happy to answer them.
Yes. Now we'll review the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, referred to as ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3, provided federally through the CARES Act. ESSER 1 was passed on March 2020. The district received $9,070,069, and these funds did supplant state funding. ESSER 2 was passed on December 2020. The district's estimated portion is $39,001,297, and at this time, we don't know whether this funding will be supplanted, supplemental, or a combination of both. ESSER 3 was passed in March of 2021. McAllen ISD's estimated portion is $87,752,918. And again, at this point, we do not know if this funding will be supplemental, supplanted, or a combination of both. Now we'll go over the uses of these CARES funds. For ESSER 1, the funds were used and applied to the April 2020 staff salaries. They were also set aside for profit, nonprofit equitable services requirements. They were utilized for district-wide water filters and district-wide air filters and ventilation, phase 1 and phase 2. The allowable uses for ESSER 2 are to prevent, prepare, and respond to COVID-19, including training and professional development, supplies to sanitize, repairing and improving facilities to reduce risk of viral transmission, improving indoor air quality, addressing children's needs, developing and implementing procedures and systems to improve district response efforts, including long-term closures, providing meals, and providing technology for online learning, purchasing educational technology, providing mental health services, implementing summer learning and supplemental after-school programs, addressing the learning loss, and other activities necessary to maintain operation of and continuity of and services. ESSER 3 requires that at least 20% of the funds be reserved to address learning loss through certain interventions like summer school and after-school programs. The remaining funds can be used on ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 uses. Now we'll go over the federal funding timelines. As we know, our fiscal year will end this year on June 30th, 2021, and next year again on June 30th of 2022. All of the ESSER funds began on March 13th, 2020. The state must award ESSER 2 funds by January 2022 or earlier, And the state must obligate ESSER 3 funds by September 23rd or earlier. Now we'll go over the updated budget summary, and this summary is based on the tax rate scenario 2 recommendation. At this point, we're projecting a reduction in state funding of $4,161,447 and an increase in tax collections of $4,622,282. As we've discussed previously, we do have some revenue streams that we're budgeting downward. They include SHARs, budgeting downward for $750,000, interest income being reduced by $600,000, the transportation allotment being reduced by $200,000, and athletic event fees being reduced by $175,000. In addition to those decreases in revenue streams, we are also increasing some of our expenditures. They include an employer health contribution of $800,000 and an employer unemployment contribution of $80,000 for a total of $880,000. Tonight we're presenting two compensation scenarios. The first one is a 2.5% increase for teachers and librarians and a 2% increase for all other staff at a cost of $4,450,000. The second scenario is a 2.5% increase for all district-wide staff, and the cost is $4,800,000. Now we'll look at the budget adjustment targets. For scenario 1, that amount is $6,594,165. That is the summation of the base budget of $2,144,165 plus scenario 1 compensation of $4,450,000. Budget adjustment target 2 is $6,944,165. Again, this is the sum of the base adjustment of $2,144,165 and scenario 2 compensation of $4,800,000. Today, administration introduced a new compensation scenario 2, which reflects a 2.5% increase for district-wide staff. We recognize that the pandemic created a very challenging work environment for every single division of the district, which includes instructional services, district operations, business operations, and human resources. The Instructional Services Division ensured that our students received a high-quality virtual learning experience by preparing and adjusting the instructional curriculum as teachers migrated to an online learning environment and provided extracurricular and co-curricular activities for students in a safe environment. District operations ensured that the electronic devices were delivered to students and staff, provided off-site meals to students, aligned district practices to CDC protocols, and embraced the role of administering COVID-19 vaccines. Business operations ensured there was no interruption in processing staff paychecks and processed premium pay to all qualifying staff. And purchase requisitions continue to be processed and vendors paid on time and as scheduled. Human resources worked to ensure staff health insurance benefits covered employee needs that arose as a result of the pandemic and worked to maintain the integrity of unemployment claims to qualifying employees. Administration is recommending scenario 2, which recognizes everyone's effort in the success of the district. This pandemic tested everybody's ability to adjust to a quickly changing environment with clarity and proficiency. Every district division is a spoke in the wheel, and each employee performs tasks that are critical in ensuring the district continues to diligently move forward. Scenario 2 allows us to recognize the high performance level of each staff member of the McAllen ISD family. Slide 12 reflects the TASBO summary of models for 2021-22, which were used to project the compensation scenarios 1 and 2. These models represent base salaries, and our projections do include fringe benefits. This slide on administrative positions highlights some of the positions that are categorized under administrative education and administrative management for your review. The preliminary budget balance plan begins with the budget adjustment target of $6,944,165 and incorporates tax scenario 2, which is the $13.86, and compensation scenario 2, which is a 2.5% compensation increase for all district staff. In order to present a balanced budget for 2021-22, major elements were produced: cost savings, cost reductions, and cost avoidance. Staff planning resulted in cost savings of $3,523,800. Net district-wide budget savings resulted in cost reductions of $491,142. Electronic device leases reimbursed by ESSER resulted in cost avoidance of $2,893,002 for an estimated excess of $36,221. The staffing budget reduction initiatives to date include instructional staff reductions, instructional assistants, reducing testing coordinators, reducing 2 middle school assistant principals, reducing skip teachers, eliminating district pay, retiree hire penalty, and eliminating NCLB stipends. Mr. Miller will discuss these cost savings in further detail during his presentation this evening. Now we'll review the technology refresh plan as it relates to the electronic device replacement schedule and the availability of ESSER funds for this initiative. ESSER funds may be used for a wide range of activities, including providing and purchasing educational technology such as hardware, software, and connectivity, as well as other activities that are necessary to maintain operation and continuity of services. As such, administration will be seeking reimbursement for next year's electronic lease device payments from ESSER funding. For fiscal year 2021-22, this amounts to $2,893,002. For fiscal year 2022 and 23 forward, the district will use ESSER 2 and/or ESSER 3 funds to lease or purchase the next refresh. Administration will leverage, to the extent possible, ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funding to address the technology refresh plan. Once ESSER funding expires, the Department of Technology will evaluate the devices and determine the timetable for the next refresh, which could occur either in fiscal year 2027-28 or fiscal year 2028-29. And would be budgeted from district funds or other sources available at that time. And now we're open to any questions you may have before we proceed to Mr. Miller's presentation.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Scenario, which I guess in your view, it would be scenario 5 then. Yeah.
Yes, I just think that in order to be clear that everybody can follow along, we have all of our PowerPoint from previous times. So now you're having a scenario of 2.5 for everybody across the board. But that amount is the amount that you have for scenario 4.
Scenario 4 was $4,450,000.
Any other questions? Trustee Sadavat?
Yes, sir. That was presented during the February 24th workshop, if I remember correctly. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If you're not speaking, can you go on mute? If you're just following along, I think that might help. Trustee Sadavat, can you? And the good news is this last meeting, we'll be back to somewhat normal next time.
I'm trying to unmute it. I can hear from you. AirPods right there, which is what I'm using. I can hear myself through the. Can you hear me now? Good. Yeah, just to be clear. Scenario we're talking about the proposed February very solid. Scenario for the
Yes, sir. That is the exact one. We just rounded it down. Yes, sir. We can get that information for you.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me now through this? Okay, good. Thank you, Jay, appreciate that, or Dr. And again, the question was that last year, the Board of Trustees approved a $300 holiday pay, which was paid out in December 2020 to employees. And what I'm asking is what was the total cost of that payment in December when we issued that payment, or the district did? And how many employees benefited from that payment of holiday pay? And we've had this discussion over the years, and I'm very much aware, as we all are, of where we are. We presented every single slide, you know, how much we have to close the gap in order to make any payments at all going into 2021, 2022. I fully appreciate and understand that, believe you me. But I do think if it's possible and it's not too late, can you calculate if we were to do the same thing in this year's budget, going to doing the same thing holiday pay for December
December 2021.
At the rate of the $300 per employee, in addition to these compensation scenarios?
It's a one-time payment. It's not a recurring cost. Although it would appear to seem so, since we did it last year, we do it again this year, we're likely to do it. You know, we continue this trend and it becomes part of the compensation. I understand that. But just for my edification and reference as to what we may or may not do going forward.
We can certainly do that. When we're talking about that particular one-time payment back in December, that's a little different from what we're doing right now. Because if we were to consider that for this next budget cycle, it's not an amount that we could incorporate into the budget, because as you can see on slide 14, there's only in excess of 36, and whatever number that amount's going to be, it's going to be much greater than that, because it was for qualifying employees at $300 plus the fringes that were related to that. So at this point, it doesn't appear that we could incorporate that as part of the budget. Last year, we were able to move forward with that because we actually assigned monies at the end of the year based on savings throughout the years that were available for that. I'm not sure we're quite there yet to determine what we would have. So if that's something that would want to be considered, I do feel that that's a discussion based on what our unassigned fund balance is at year end. Obviously, that decision will have to be made in June when we approve compensation, because it has to be approved prior to coming into contracts.
Yes.
So we will have a better picture for you, but we can certainly come back and get an estimate on that.
Exactly, and knowing that, that's the reason I'm suggesting it, because if it's not included at this time, then there's no way you can do it in the next year. Even if you find funds going through the year that you're able to acquire, you now cannot make a decision. The board can't do it in the So this is a chance for us to look at it. I understand right now the answer would have, it's like going to mom and dad right now. Well, the answer is no right now, but if you come back next week, maybe it's a little bit more. So I just like to see us how that might look and how it might play out, especially when we have other things in motion that we have yet to talk about, land sale, and because that could also have an impact if you have land sale and one-time utilization of those funds, if at all possible. I understand.
And we're still
looking into it.
Yes, and we're still evaluating where we're projecting to land on June 30th, as a result of some of the losses we did incur this year in terms of some revenue streams, although we were able to offset some of those losses with items like the sale of real property and stuff like that. So, yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. President, for the time.
Anybody else?
Yes, and I'm sorry if you were talking about this when I was getting my microphone on and situated. Trustee Saldivar, were you talking about the electronic devices, or you were just talking about the salaries and the? Okay. Okay. So my questions are about the lease payment to SR. I realize that you want to do that for this year, but then for the following year and the following year and then the following year. I mean, to me, that's money that you're not sure that we're going to be getting. I mean, supposedly we're going to get that SR money, but you just don't know how much is going to be coming to us, really. And so to have that number in there in order to pay for salaries, in order to make our budget, that's very concerning to me. Will you explain more, go into more depth about that? Because I have great pause on that.
Yes, we are expecting to receive $39 million from ESER 2 and $87 million from ESER 3. Even if there is an issue with supplanting at the state level, and we're talking over $120 million for the district, we're certainly going to receive a large portion of that, is our understanding as it is. The most recent talk on ESER 2 was a possibly 50% of that if they used it to fund the hold harmless, second semester home harmless. That still gives us close to $20 million from that bucket, plus a lot of the $87 million there. So we're talking over $100 million that we're anticipating receiving for the district for the term of this funding. And if we come back over here, the funding for ESER 3 right now is set to expire in September of 2024. So as we look at our chart here, There's no reason for us to believe that funding availability would not be there in terms of the $2.8 million for 2021, the 1.118498 in 2022-23. At that point, we could refresh. And that also allows us monies during those funding periods to utilize either for a refresh in either 22-23 or as far out as September of 2024. And when we come back here, the literature we are reading does indicate that it would allow for the purchasing of educational technology.
So this is, I guess I should have asked this. Without ESSER, with just our local, federal, and state funding, would we be able to afford this pay raise if we took out that 2.8 for the following year?
That is one of the elements that is allowing us to balance for next year.
So
without it, we would not balance with the scenario we're looking at the tune of close to $2.9 million.
So that's, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
But that's my point, is that you're using money that's not based on our regular, daily, what we know we're going to get through local, federal, and state funds. That's what, in my mind, we should use for our budget. The rest, that's a different bucket. That's the extra, that's the gravy that we get to make ourselves whole again in other areas and do all the things that we need to. But we don't use that to cover our basics of turning on the lights, of running the business of the school district. That gives me great concern that money, that number is in there. I'd like to see what we could do without putting that number in there. Do we have anything like that to look at, that without putting that extra windfall of money in there, just using our local, federal, and state funds that we know we're getting? Do we have that scenario and what that would look like? That would be zero raises.
Well, that would be reducing any amount of compensation that we could accommodate for. We also want to keep in mind that the ESSER funding does allow for pre-award costs dating back to March 13th, 2020. They have acknowledged
Okay,
that.
I don't want to interrupt you. Well, I do want to interrupt you because no offense, but I mean, I get what you're saying. But what I'm saying is, without this extra bucket, what were we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Were we going to have another year with no raises?
Well, right now we've got the 2.1 that we're looking for, and you're talking about the 2.9. That would be about a 5.1.
I guess let me ask this.
Looking at something in the neighborhood of probably the 1% raise, which and I don't know if you had in front of you, I know Mr. Sandoval did, but the 1% raise was an additional $2.5 million.
Yeah, it's 2.5. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's 2,501,526. That's scenario one, which is 1%.
That's the one that we can afford without using this extra money. That's the one that I think that we should be focusing on. I don't think that we should be using balancing our budget with money that we don't know that we're going to get for sure. And to me, we should find the savings within our own district. I don't see anything on here of the cost savings that we found. I know we have reduction in staff that gave us the $3.5 million, but where are the other savings? I do see the SHARs, the interest, the transportation, but that wasn't us going through our budgets and finding savings in different departments. So where's the millions? Where did we cut back in order to make in order to give raises? Or we were just waiting on this big gift of ESSER?
Well, we were going to use ESSER for the electronic devices. I know that instructional services and the other departments have looked into their budgets to see if there were any large items that we could reduce, and a lot of them right now are continuing recurring expenditures for the departments. So that's been a task they have looked at. At this point, we haven't been able to find something with large dollar amounts, because you're looking for items in the $1 million as we look at this. We know that 80% of our budget is in personnel, and that's why a lot of the focus was on the staffing plan of the 3.5 on there.
But where is the data? Where is the documentation on any cost savings? 60,000 in this department, 80,000 in this department. Where's that?
What we did with the savings, that's a combination of reductions that we made both for departments, all departments, and campuses. So what we did with the departments is every department reduced their budget to up to 3% of their current budget this year. And for the campuses, they receive a per pupil allocation, and that was reduced by $5 per enrollment for them. And the combination of those two is what came up with a savings of $491,000. So it was a 3% reduction for departments, up to 3% for departments.
That's the 491, 142.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I'll yield the floor.
And just as we would go back to the scenarios, as we look at everything we're looking here, if we were to disregard the 2.893B002, we're probably looking at about $4 million right there. So we probably could go back and look at some of scenarios 1, 2, and 3 again if we wanted to pull that out.
I mean, me personally, I think we should be looking at scenarios 1 and 2, just because that's the money that we truly have.
Trustee Spice.
And this is more of questions that I think our taxpayers need to know, and I know the answer to this question, but I think they need to know. When is the last time the school district has increased taxes? Does anyone here know? If you don't know, that's good. That means it's been a really long time.
It's been a long time. We used to have, there was a year, and I actually do have it with me. I'd have to pull it out. There was a time when we had reduced our tax rate. It used to be $1.16 and a half, and we reduced it to $1.15 and a half. And at that point, that was an actual reduction to what we had. The district has never raised the M&O taxes because other than our tax ratification election, we had never previously had a tax reduction, and that's the only way we could have raised our M&O taxes. So what we did at that point, although we did increase our M&O tax rate as a result of the TRE, we didn't raise the total tax rate at all at that year.
Exactly.
So in the court of law,
In 2018-19 when we did our TRE.
in the court of law, this would be a leading question, right? So my next question is, knowing that we haven't increased taxes, we've actually decreased taxes. You would agree that we will probably have one of the lowest tax bases in Texas and more so with surrounding districts, am I correct?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay.
Definitely in Hidalgo County.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So in saying that, we also know
We
that
are
we're-
probably around number, we are with at 17 school districts that the Hidalgo County tax office collects on.
Okay.
We're at the bottom.
So,
And
or
in
you could
doing
flip it and
so-
say we're number one and the least amount of taxes paid by our taxpayer. Excuse me.
That's okay. So in doing that, we're also having to compete against surrounding districts with not only the pay, but also buildings, infrastructure, all that, having the lowest tax rate. Am I correct?
Yes,
We've been fortunate in the past years, and I say this loosely, right, and with caution, because I know that these disasters has affected people, but it's been able to bring us money to our district, and we've been able to be creative on how we use that money that normally, as trustee Alvarez says, we wouldn't have the luxury of doing. Am I correct? I mean, I'm saying this because I want our taxpayers to know that we're in the position that we're in because we're very frugal about how we do things, number one. And number two is, I want our employees to know that the gift is not just a gift that we put in a box and say, this is for us. We're trying to be creative in how we do things, because I think we all know in this room that if we were to go to, one of our big box stores and hand out a flyer and tell everybody, hey, if we increase our taxes, we'll pay our teachers more, would you agree they would tell us no. Because the way they look at it is, it's not that the teachers or employees shouldn't be paid more, it's that we don't want an increase in taxes. And so I think that the job of the district is to find creative ways to be able to kill two birds with one stone. And although I do feel, and which is my next question is, if we were to give the 2.5% increase, and in the next 5 years, we don't have a disaster relief, we keep our budget the way it is, there's going to be a certain point, and just to make things straight, we all know that all districts, not just McAllen ISD, all districts in this area are losing kids, right? And we're not losing them because they want to go to because our schools aren't good enough, or because our teachers aren't good enough, or because our administration isn't good enough, or because our school board is not good enough. They're leaving because they have choices, right? And we have, you know, the most, I think the only district next to us, I think, is Sheridan, that has the 2 A ratings in a row. We have the post-secondary distinction 2 years in a row, which they don't have. So obviously, parents aren't leaving because they don't feel that we don't have the adequate infrastructure here. They're leaving because they have choices. And that's going to continue to happen because more schools are going to pop up and more charter schools are coming. So I guess my question is, 5 years down the road, from this day forward, we don't have a disaster relief or any kind of extra money coming in. Are we going to be able to balance our budget based on what we're estimating our budget's going to be?
Yes.
That's a great question. Sorry, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, and as part of the $2.5 million, as part of the budget reduction initiatives, we did that based on staffing guidelines, which is student needs, based on 1 teacher per whatever. So we reducing the teacher count to 46. We started out at 52, we were able to get it down to 46, or saving, if you will. Some teachers, I think that's good, will continue that, looking at the non-instructional side. We sat down in ELP back in August, September, and talked about budget initiatives. Everything's on the table. And I'll talk tonight about a couple, and they're just a couple $1,000s, but again, everything's on the table. So we're looking just district-wide, even overtime analysis. Do we really need overtime? Can we flex all these type of things? Because we know, you're right, student enrollment will continue, so we're going to have to find the savings to allow this recurring expenses and things like that. But there's $3.5 million that we didn't have back in August, September, that we worked so hard to get. Is there more? Yes, I think there's a continued search for that.
So just look, I'm not insulting anybody's intelligence here. I just want the people listening to know that we know what we're up against. We know that if this is what the budget we're proposing, we know that our administration has thought far ahead, saying, absent this money, we can still continue. I know that. I'm sure we all here know that, but I just want to put it out there, you know, saying that it's out there and we know what we're up against.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll yield.
Thank you, Trustee Suarez. I do have a question for Mr. Hanlon. Mr. Hanlon, I know you follow dealings in Austin, and there's a lot of noise, a lot of chatter right now that the state's delaying payments of the EASER or the CARES Act. Are you hearing anything that there's any chance that they will not pay us?
Have I heard anything about that?
Yes, sir.
The legislature, the people in Austin are trying their dead level best to steal as much of it as they possibly can. So that there is a problem with that, is that the federal statute, the American Recovery Act has a limitation on it that they can't cut state appropriations for public education by more than 10%. So from the CARES Act, they learned their lesson. So they're not going to be able to get ESSER 3 as much as they want, but they're scheming to do it as hard as they can. So the answer is they're not going to be able to get it all, but they're wrestling for it. That's going on right now.
Yeah, that's what I understood. And Dr. Gonzalez, I guess the question for you is, I mean, I'm willing to roll the dice. I mean, it's been a tough year. for everybody, especially our teachers, having to adjust to online and asynchronous and coming back and then going back and it's just back and forth. And last year we weren't able to do a pay increase, so I mean, I'd rather roll the dice and give as much as possible. So let's just say the CARES Act does not come in, and the money's not there, and we're still a shortfall of 4 million. What's your plan? What's the worst case scenario plan at that point?
Right now, as Mr. pointed out, we feel confident that even if there is a reduction, and as Mr. O'Hanlon pointed out, it won't be more than 10%, so we still have the money invested. So if you look at that position, and if you look at budget development and how we designed budgets in the past, and you compare to how we do it now, the variables that we didn't have in the past that we have now is the user one year. So we have to be creative and innovative to put ourselves in a position to compensate our staff. So if you look at the body of work that we've put in since the pandemic hit, if you look at from the teachers to the principals, the assistant principals, coordinators, directors, A to Z, all the way through the entire organization, our district is flourished in this environment, and we want to provide compensation at the highest rate possible. Now, we have 2.5% for everybody, but if we could, we'd go even higher than that. Because if you look at last year, we gave a 0% raise with a $300 Christmas, I guess we called it a Christmas bonus, but it was just a
Holiday pays was statute refers.
So one of those things that we wanted to do this year is think outside the box, be creative and innovative, and we feel that we've come with a plan, and we're confident that it will put us in a position to compensate our teachers, to compensate all of our staff.
I think we lost you, sir.
We lost you all the time.
Okay, to compensate our staff and to continue moving this district forward, and we believe that we would be able to maintain our budgets moving forward when ESER 1 and 2 are out of the picture, to the creative ways that we're working on paying for our technology. I mean, that's the challenge of being a one-to-one district as well. But we believe that this team has put something in place that shows our staff members that we appreciate the hard work and that we're going to compensate them. And it's still not going to put us in a position to get close to number 1 or 2 in teacher pay or principal pay. We're still going to be, Todd, where are we going to rank? If we give this 2.5% to teachers, we'd still be what, 8?
I think we'll probably fall, my guess, only it's like a 5 at best, but probably 6 or 7, because there's 3 districts last year that didn't give raises according to TASB. And and that's Harlingen, Westaco, and Cherryland according to TASB. And they're probably going to try to do the best that they can this year. And a lot of them do their budgets after us. So it's not like we're going to climb substantially with this 2.5% increase.
Right. So that was part of the position, and that is why we talked about it for a long time. When we took out scenario 1 and 2, the 1% and the 1.5, we just didn't feel like that was adequate compensation for our staff, and we didn't even want to bring this to our board for consideration. And we do understand that we need to put all the scenarios and leave them there for transparency
Dr.
purposes.
Gonzalez, really quick.
Yes.
The 3 schools that you said didn't give raises were who? You would agree that they all have a higher city tax rate or school tax rate than we do? Okay, just wanted to clarify.
And that's another thing I did want to point out is with a disaster tax relief option, we could have gone and made a recommendation to our board for 4 pennies without going to the voters. But we decided not to do that. We left those $4 million on the table, and we decided to go with the tax rate. What is it, Cindy? 1.386?
1.13, yes, 1.1386 as opposed to the first scenario, which if we leverage the full opportunity of the declared disaster, leveraging that to the fullest extent, that would have increased the taxpayers' tax rate by 3.3 cents to a total of $1.1760. That would have leveraged us with $4,829,501.
But
We chose, we moved towards scenario 2, which kept the entire total tax rate the same.
we could have done that for 2 years, right? Then it would have reverted back to the original tax rate. But because of our philosophies in our district, we believe that we could be creative and innovative, not raise taxpayers' taxes, and still come to our board with a recommendation for a 2.5 for everybody.
Okay. I've been wanting to say this all year, but it's not appropriate. I want to say I'll reclaim my time. So can you say something, Marco, so I can say, okay. The last question is more for Ms. Benavides. Ms. Benavides, I know we spent some time talking about the retention, the recruiting of students. I forgot the other R, but nevertheless, what I think the goal for next year is 380 students, right? Not losing that or losing just that many, right? Or do you follow me on where I'm going with that question?
Sorry, I do follow you. And I would say, yes, so the goal is to try and retain or to slow the loss.
To slow the loss.
Yeah.
Is that a conservative number that, not a conservative number, but is that a achievable number in, as far as the resource that y'all have now?
I think it can be. I think the variable right now has been the pandemic, right? Not to use that as an excuse, but it is a reality. But I think other than that, and holding that constant, I think the number is achievable, and we do try to be conservative.
And I know y'all done a really good job as a district, and this is just a comment for Dr. Gonzalez and everybody else. I think the one question I'm hearing out in the community at different events is, what's the plan for next year? And we're doing a great job of putting it out there. But I think the one thing that I want to say is, I think you've done a really good job with your soup talks and getting out there. But I think also we're missing just a small segment. I think we got to include our principals, and we got to include them like today, and let them know what the plan is for next year. And then people have questions, because with all due respect, sometimes people don't even know that who you are,
Yes, sir.
who I am, as far as, and that's Mike. They only know who their teacher is or their principal for that matter. So I think we're going to be really aggressive and try to get that number, and I think we can, because people are anxious to get back. I mean, we're all anxious to do stuff. If our community knows, surrounding community knows that we're going to open up and we're starting to this summer, I think that number, we're going to start filling up, especially with all the great things that are happening here in the school district. So I think I'll end it with that, because I think that's one component. I think we're going to get the CARES Act, but in case we don't, I know, y'all have a plan for worst case scenario. And I just think at this point, in my opinion too, and this is what I like about the board, we all bring up different things, and I'm concerned about the CARES Act money too being delayed, but I think our priority this year has to be that pay increase as much as possible. So, Mr. Polina, you've been the only one that's speaking. Do you want to have any questions, sir?
Thank you, I appreciate that, sir. I don't know if it's been discussed, but did I hear that FEMA funds were going to be available as well, besides the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3? Did they say that FEMA funds would be available to compensate with pay somewhere along the way for those teachers from January 2021 forward?
No, that is not what we're hearing on that. As far as FEMA is concerned, they were really restricted at the time to people that were actually providing direct COVID-19 type of services. At one time, we thought we could reach out to FEMA funding reimbursements for our premium pay for employees, and that all that is disqualified on there. If anything, you'd be looking at any services directly related to COVID, to our health and safety, which would be police department. In terms of safety, health would be nursing, stuff like that. So it's a very minimal what may qualify for FEMA funding for the district.
But I think we also need to take in consideration all the nurses that have been doing the vaccinations, all the administration that has been assisting with the data entry for the vaccinations. I think that's an avenue that we need to pursue in some sort of fashion, because it hasn't been 2 or 3 people. I mean, we've mobilized an army of people that have essentially put themselves in harm's way to go assist with these vaccinations. So I'd like to see if we can maybe follow up and see, is that a possibility to use these FEMA funds and compensate our nurses that have been putting the shots in the arms, our principals and assistant principals, and those members of administration that have been out and guiding everybody as they're coming in to get the vaccination. I think that's an opportunity. I might have been just something that I heard, but yes, Mrs. Benavides.
No, yes, sir. And that is something that we're looking at from an emergency standpoint, and those funds available for those that have been supporting in that capacity. And so that's why we track all of the folks that are attending our clinics as volunteers, and we're tracking with signatures specifically for the FEMA reimbursement opportunity. We have been told, though, that, it's one of those situations where funds may be limited. We're not sure when we would get reimbursed. So I think from a planning standpoint, I think we're hesitant to count on those funds but that doesn't mean that we're not pursuing the funds.
Okay, I just want to make sure because I want, and I understand the entire disaster activity report that we have to fill out for everybody that's been there. But at the same time, I want to say that there was a report out that said that FEMA was now going to be issuing more funds for some of our teachers. So that is an avenue that I'd like for us to look up and see if that is a possibility. I do agree with the labeling of the scenarios 1 and 2, that should be scenarios 4 and 5. Just so that we're all on the same page, not only us as board members, but those members of the community that are watching our broadcast. And, I think this is it's a great look. Even if we weren't to get the entire, whether it be 39 million or 87 million, we do know that there's some revenue coming in. So I would like to see that used to the best of our abilities. I appreciate the time. Thank you, sir.
Okay, we're back to opening up to other board members. I think you had said something, Trustee Sandoval. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. This year, everyone clearly knows, and last year, but especially this year, it's been an extraordinary, exceptional, and unsure for everybody. It's been, decisions are being made at the individual level regarding budgets for families and communities. And clearly, the school district's no different. But I believe in a glass being half full, not half empty. I'm always an optimist versus the other. I think together, if we put our glasses together, it creates a full glass. So whether you're a pessimist and you see it half full, or you're an optimist, you see it, half empty, and you're an optimist, you see it half full. Putting both of our glasses together, now we fill the glass. And the other is that together, this community, and especially the community being McAllen ISD, but the community of McAllen and the region, which includes Hidalgo County, Cameron, Willacy, and Star, it's been extraordinary about how we've come together as a community. But specifically McAllen ISD, with the teachers and the staff and the nurses and the food service providers who put themselves, as Trustee Alvarado said, in harm's way without hesitating to make sure the children got food. And even at the worst of times of the pandemic, they were out there serving them food to make sure they had nutrition. But together we have achieved positive student and professional outcomes. And for that, I support the administration's recommendation of at least 2.5% across the board for everybody together. I know, we all know that every month, which is very unusual for school boards, by the way, get a financial report of all accounting of all funds that are taking place. Because when we set the budget, that's a budget just like any household. This is what we should going forward. But we all know as you go month to month, the car breaks down, somebody gets sick, plumbing breaks down. Now you got to draw. And even though you may have budgeted, it may turn out to be much more than what you budgeted. Or you didn't budget at all because you didn't anticipate. So you got to make adjustments. That's no different for us. And that's why it's important when we look at our budget, which we all do on this board, is that we look at the actuals. What are the actuals? And we've been tracking very, very conservatively that the actuals are actually very, very good. But you have not taken those actuals to say, oh, we got more money than we anticipated when we budgeted, so we're going to now spend it. You have not done that as an administration, and you've not come to the board to do any frivolous thing or any want things. It's all things of needs, and I commend you for that. It's not easy because there are a lot of needs and there's certainly a lot of wants. We got to recall that. The other is anytime there's a movement of funds, we get a report from that. And we had one on Monday night when you have to move funds from one to the other. And there've been a lot of movement this year compared to the normal time because there've been shortfalls, as we saw today. In other areas, we didn't spend it like we had budgeted and anticipated. And so now we have a chance, to make some really difficult decisions. And again, I commend the administration for keeping us on track on that because prior other boards and even this continuous body, you would do that maybe quarterly or once a year where you would show all the reallocation of funds. We do it on a month-to-month basis. And I appreciate Ms. Richards and Mrs. Adele that we're getting that information as a board. The long and the short is this is probably the most efficient, informed body corporate of any, of understanding where we are financially, where we need to go moving into the future, the importance of our staff, the belief in our children, and the support of our parents for all their efforts, especially this year, because they've taken a lot of load. They have taken a lot of load. And so, anytime anybody asks me, and they've been asking me a lot because I'm out there on the campaign trail, yes, I don't have an opponent, but I am grateful. I am blessed. And so therefore I'm out there and I'm listening and I'm talking to folks, and they're prepared to come back to school. They just need to know what. And my response to them is, my part is I'm doing everything I can possibly be as one member of a team of 8 to help the administration with guidance and direction that we should be able to start on school on time in August. I guess it's August the 23rd of 2021. So I think, again, a budget is a budget. It doesn't mean it's etched in stone. And like with anything, as it was when I was still working, you knew there was going to be, at least for me, there was going to be a time where you got your salary compensation, but then you also got your bonus. And depending on how hard you work, it changed things. I didn't include that in. But at the same time, you knew it was there. There are things here that are in play that we know are going to be in play, and they're going to be a positive thing that we can utilize, and we should utilize. It is the right thing to do at the right time, and it puts us in no jeopardy at this time. The one area, though, that I'm really, well, two areas. One is the remaining pieces of property, which we're not talking about today, and I understand that, so I can't get into it in great detail. It's not on the agenda, but it is a concern because that does impact as to what we do with funding. If we're continuing to pay for things that are not being used by our children. If we have land that we're using that are not being used by our children, that is a concern. Because if you were a homeowner or in the private sector, you would not continue to carry that expense of maintenance and support and all of that. It just wouldn't. So my feeling is to the community, we ought to make that hard decision moving over the next several months to get down to the bare bones. Because to me, it's a reset button we're about to get. A reset button that this district over 100 years never had before, through world wars, through a part of the district separating from itself when they created McAllen ISD. I mean, imagine that big change in the district when you lose a big chunk of your population that just separates from you. But we continue to move forward as we continue to do now. But this is a reset button that we're about to push. And because of that, there's going to be opportunities and challenges. But most importantly, it's the greatest possibility of us doing a great amount of things for our children as we move forward. So that's the one thing. The other is we got to attract and retain teachers. And before the pandemic, nationwide, there was a projection of shortage of teachers available, even with alternative certification. Now with the pandemic, you're going to see more baby boomers. They're going to start retiring because they're going to make that choice of coming back or not. So that's going to put us in even, not just us, every district. So we have to have a continued compensation package that's competitive and supportive of attracting individuals that our children are going to need to continue to move forward. So those are two areas that I'm real concerned about in managing our expenses, cost avoidance, and cost expense control. And again, I commend the administration because together, the team of 8 in the administration, we've done considerable amount of that over the last many years, of which all of us have been here, and we will continue to do that. But I have every deal of confidence that, again, together we will move this district forward, and I support the recommendation of the 2.5, whether it's called whatever scenario you refer to it. I think it's scenario 5. I also think we should be looking at the holiday pay, if there's a real possibility of that. And then we should get rid of any property in which you don't have students on there attending school. Because that will show the community we're as lean as you can possibly be going into the future. And when that reset button gets hit, now we can start making plans of what we do next. Thank you. Excuse the speech.
We still have one more, Trustee Alisa.
Thank you. You know, you said some words in there, actuals and difficult. I think that everybody on this board here wants to give the biggest raise that we can to teachers. We'd love to give a 4% raise to teachers. I think the 2.5% across the board to everyone, I think that's fantastic. But you don't do that on, so to speak, fake money that's not in your account. You do that, you balance your budget on real money. And our real money is what we get local, state, and federal. It's not what we are promised to get. So maybe we should look at it where we have enough money right now to do the 1% raise. Maybe we come back in August when we actually receive the money, if the government actually sends it to us like they're supposed to, based on how much they give us, then we do an extra bump, an extra 1.5 or an extra 3% and give them a 4% raise. But we take it in steps like we did when we got House Bill 3. We base our budget on actual dollars that we have, not on what if scenarios, on actually what's in our budget. And if we haven't been conservative and we haven't cut back enough and we haven't been able to find the money for a raise, shame on us. But we don't look to this gift of the ESSER money, the CARES Act. That's something above and beyond. That's not what we base our budget on. We base our budget on local, state, and federal funds. And that's what we need to do. I'm very hesitant to balance a budget on money that's not guaranteed. I mean, it's promised, but there's no guarantee that that promise is going to be fulfilled. You base your budget, you balance your budget on real numbers. And I have a huge problem with that. I, like everyone here, want to give a huge raise. I mean, we all know everybody works incredibly hard. We're all grateful. We'd love to give you a ton of money. But you do it with real money. You don't do it with the what if scenarios. You don't balance a budget on what if. You balance a budget on what is. And what we know we have is $1 million. So we can do the 1%. That's what we know we have. I think we need to step back, pause, continue with this workshop, but keep it in our mind that when we come back to the next workshop, maybe let's ask for this scenario of scenario 1, and then coming back with an adjustment in August after we actually know what money we have. Because yes, we all want to give as much raise as we can. We want to give the highest raise we can. We're all in agreement there. But I just think that this board, we need to be, it's very difficult for us because we love what we do and we love the teachers and staff here. We love everybody in this room and we admire what they do. And this year has been very painful for everybody, very hard working for everybody. But our job is to not be emotional. Our job is to not be political. Our job is to be conservative with our money and be good stewards of our money. We have fiduciary duty. And no, we're not going to raise taxes. Yes, we are going to give teacher raises. The question is, how much can we afford? And I think that we need to keep it with real dollars that we know we have.
Okay, anybody else?
What would assist us as we move forward, and thank you so much for your feedback. It really is important for us to understand what your observations are once we present. But one of the two things I did want to see if I could get clarification on as we move forward and we start planning is that is it, I guess, not necessarily a consensus but the board for us to move forward with, and I'll start with our first recommendation, which was to move forward with the resolution and recommendation or scenario 2 on moving forward with the declared disaster tax rate resolution and maintaining a total tax rate at $1.1386. Everybody, because that's part of how we factor in our budget.
I would recommend that you as a staff make that evaluation based on what you heard and not put it in a position to do a rolling count or rolling read. I think there's good information that was put out by all of us that can give you the answer to your question.
I'm sorry.
That is our recommendation. Our recommendation is to utilize the scenario 2, take advantage and leverage the declared tax rate provision, and maintain our total tax rate at $1.1386.
Yeah, Ms. Richards, this is a workshop, as you know, and in a workshop, if we were to start to say, I agree to this, I agree to that, it becomes a vote, and we're not allowed to vote. So to answer your question, I think Mr. Suarez is pointing out, you've gotten some really good information. There's a little commonality in all of it, and there's some differences in it. I think the commonality on that scenario, I think it's very easy to see. And so I think the superintendent, when you all meet in your ELT, you can debrief. If you need a little bit of clarity, my suggestion is to contact the board president, and he will help you as based on his clarity of understanding. And he may not be able to answer all those questions because there's clearly some differences here, of which there probably isn't a consensus. And so that's the reason you're seeing us not say anything in that regard.
Right.
Because we cannot vote
That's
here
fine.
or have a poll or anything of that nature at this time.
So,
Yeah, your mic's on.
First, I want to commend the board for the feedback because if you look at the grand scheme of things and how hard the team has worked to even get to this point to make these recommendations to you, it helps us tremendously when we start to get feedback from every board member. And we've received enough feedback this afternoon to go back to the drawing board and come together as a team. And I know that from my perspective, it's clear cut on the recommendation we're going to make on the tax rate. We're not gonna recommend as an administration that we go for the 4 pennies. So we're coming back in and we're going to stay at the 1, 3, 8, 6, as far as our recommendation is going to be. As far as the compensation, we'll go back, we'll talk, and we'll come back with what we believe is the most conservative, innovative way to compensate our staff, given all the circumstances that we're dealing with.
thank you. Okay, the next, we are now going to then move on to the presentation, the Human Resources Update presented by Mr. Todd Miller.
Can y'all hear me? Good evening. Excuse me, and I'll try to go quick. There's lots of slides, and if you have any questions, holler. So tonight I'm going to cover, can you hear me? Budget reduction initiatives to date. Ms. Cindy talked about $3.5 million. We've talked about 4 of them. I'll cover the first 3. The 3 that haven't been introduced, excuse me, I'm sorry. Teacher librarian base salary range from 2021, 2022, historical compensation review, true compensation. I think that's very important for people to truly understand that, the compensation package. Base medical plan comparison with a couple local districts, staffing comparison, why McAllen ISD, total years of experience, not only for teachers and librarians, but also new teachers, teacher turnover rate, exit surveys, reason for departure, teacher stipend comparison, teacher incentive comparison, and just proposed staffing guideline adjustments. Budget reduction initiatives to date, like I said, I'll cover the 3 that's listed there in green. Reduced 2 middle school APs, one at Brown, one at Travis, that's saving $140,000. Eliminate district paying retiree hire surcharges, $45,000, and eliminate the no child left behind stipend. So allow me to go to those pages, please. Reduce 2 middle school assistant principals. ELT to review the staffing guidelines to identify opportunities for savings and efficiencies, and we did this across the whole district. Excuse me, so 2 middle school APs in 2021, to get the second AP, you had to have over 601 or more students. Administration is recommending that we update that to 801 plus for the second AP. That essentially reduces 1 AP each at Travis and Brown. Both campuses have a school improvement facilitator to assist with those duties. And to make that decision, we used snapshot enrollment data. Travis was at snapshot 561, Brown's at 644. And the other middle schools are ranging from the 905 all the way up to the 1001. So it was drastically lower at those 2 middle schools. I'm going to move on to eliminating the district paying the retiree hire surcharge. Again, like I said, back in the fall, we started everything's on the table. Where are we spending money? Where can we save and eliminate expenses? So TRS surcharges. Employers will owe surcharges to TRS each month on all retirees who retired after September 1st, 2005 and work more than 1 half-time employment. TRS allows the employer to pass these surcharges on to the employee. The average district surcharge is about $4,900 a month, or about $45,000 a year. Administration is proposing we take these 6 retire-rehire employees and pass this surcharge on to them, and that's going to be an approximate $7,500 per employee for those 6 employees that are retired and then rehired. Next one, I know the cost amount is real low. It's only $3,800, but this is eliminating the No Child Left Behind stipend. The purpose of this stipend, this dates back to January 2002, to assist and encourage instructional aid employees to go get certified. Instructional aides hired before January 2002 must meet the certification requirements, so there was a financial incentive to go get your certification. Initial 2002 guidance stipends will continue, provided funds are available through Title II. Well, as of today, Title II no longer pays for these stipends, and it falls on the responsibility of the departments. We have currently a total of 31 district-wide employees that get this stipend. It costs the district all total $20,400, but local funds is only $3,800. Administration is proposing we stop these stipends because we're not getting, to be honest, anything back in exchange. We're not pursuing their education at this point. Okay, next slide is teacher librarian base salary. Now this is based on the 2.5, so if we need to come back to update this, we will, of course. But this is assuming 2.5. Assuming that is passed by the board, then that teachers will get a minimum of $1,410 minimum increase for the current staff. There are 5, bear with me, I think there's 5 groups that will see a slight additional amount to further decompress salary levels. So the 10-month salary range is $51,000 for a 0-year teacher. Today it's $49,800. The 10-month salary max is $83,052, and that's for teachers at the top end, very, very top end, 48-year teachers. The minimum hiring placement, this is people new to the district. Daily rate $272.73 for $51,000, or the max daily rate new to the district $330.11 for $61,730. Historical compensation review. This chart shows a historical review of teachers, librarians' pay. So I kind of went back in buckets, if you will, 2008, 2009, jump forward 5 or 6 years, 2014, 2015, and then current year, 2020, 2021. So you'll see the different buckets. Of course, that last column on the right assumes a 2.5% increase. So true compensation. I know we've talked about it at the last couple of workshops and all this other stuff. I think this is very important for people to understand. So administration knows that maintaining a competitive compensation package is critical in attracting, recruiting, developing, and retaining high-quality staff. In addition to an employee's salary, which includes, of course, their salary, their premium pay, stipends, and extra duty pay, employees must also factor in the district-paid portion of benefits as part of their true compensation package. McAllen ISD's true compensation package includes the following district-paid portion of benefits: the health, prescriptions, and life insurance, dental, employee assistance program, workman's compensation insurance, and unemployment insurance. So per each employee, it's $460.43 per employee per month. Times 12 months, that equals $5,525 per year per employee. So it quickly adds up. Total annual district paid portion of benefits is $17,680,512 plus TRS contributions. So the benefits team, I want to end with this on this slide. The benefits team is working towards providing each employee their own personalized compensation statement, this fall. So I'm excited about that because each employee will be able to say, wow, this is really what the district pays me. Base medical plan. I know we've talked benefits here recent at a workshop. So we just looked at a couple local districts. On this chart, you'll see employee and family, and then employee only on the far right-hand side. So if you look at McAllen, employee family is going to pay $668 a month premium, and their deductible is $3,000 a year. So you can go across for the employee only, or you can go down. So I'll compare McAllen, and I know San Benito is kind of the exception, but I just wanted to list it anyways. So if I'm comparing McAllen against San Benito, it's a couple $100 a month savings. So that's more money that I'm saving and not paying out. But look at that deductible, $10,000. So I wanted to list that because people, when they start looking at what is my true compensation, you need to look at are you saving money in benefits? What about copays, deductibles? It could just go on and on and on. So I think our benefit team does an excellent job. Even when I got a diabetes program, I think there's like $100,000 savings we've been able to get on that. Now, it's not savings like to put in the bank, so to speak, but it's reducing our expenses on the medical side. So anything that reduces our medical expenses is obviously a win-win. So staying on this chart real quick, medical, we charge our single employee only $52, and it's only $1,000 deductible. I can go to San Benito and maybe make a few more dollars, and I don't pay anything for my medical, but look at my deductible on even the employee only. So I'm really excited about the compensation statement because I think that's going to help our employees truly understand their true compensation. Moving on to staffing comparison. This chart compares staffing levels back in 2015-16 versus 2020-2021. And with the exception of the paraprofessionals, the district has seen a decrease in every category. So in the board book every year, you'll see the PEAMS. It's kind of a historical data. It breaks down each category of employee, and it goes from left to right from like 2012, 2013, whatever it is, all the way to the right-hand side. So we'll see a good comparison of that. I'd like to ask the question, what initially attracted you to McAllen ISD? So these are taken from our new employee 90-day survey. So you'll see that advancement opportunity, maybe recommended by a former student or recommendation from an employee, and even location of McAllen. So people don't like to travel much down here. I mean, when I worked for the bank, they might work in Edinburgh, and they would literally transfer when an opening became available to McAllen if they didn't want to drive from Edinburgh to McAllen. Now for me, I'm like, it's only 5 miles or 10 miles, but so we don't, a lot of people down here don't want to travel far, so location is important. This next chart is pretty interesting to me. It's total years of experience. So you'll see, I will advise you, you'll see some of these numbers change a little bit. A lot of it, look at the source in the bottom left-hand side. So some of these numbers come from TASB, some of them come from PEMS. And as you know, it's a snapshot in time, so it depends when those numbers were pulled. But I like this chart because it shows me average years of experience. You'll see on the left-hand side, and we've seen this a couple weeks ago at the previous workshop, it's about the median is the 13-year mark. But on the right-hand side, these are also teachers and librarians, and McAllen, out of the 8 districts listed, we're 4th. And I think that's pretty good. And Westlake goes all the way up 16.8, so those people get there and they don't leave. But if you look at, we are above, Harlingen, La Jolla, Mission, and PSJA. Pretty surprising because you think of those are, and they're good employees, they're good districts, but we have a 13.5 average years of experience for teachers and librarians. Moving on to the next slide, total years of experience for our new teachers. I like this slide too because I broke it down. There's 451 total new teachers and librarians listed on this slide since 2017, 2018. But we broke it down in 0 to 10 and then 11 plus years. So do we get a lot of new teachers in the front half, 0 to 10? And by the way, how many are we getting in that 11 plus years of experience? And I think that's the best part of this slide. On the 11 plus years of experience, we still, over this 2017, 18 to today, we've attracted at McAllen ISD 76 new teachers with double-digit years of experience. So, and I think of Mr. McClenny, if I can, at Morris Middle School, he goes out and recruits, actively recruits, and he gets teachers of the year from some local districts. And there's a lot of recruiters. We have a lot of recruiters and constantly out there. So we are getting great teachers, not only in the 0 to 5 and 0 to 10, but the 11 plus years. So I think this chart, to me, screams volumes for me. This next one is the teacher turnover by campus. This is one that we showed last year, and I think this is good, but don't read too much into the numbers. I will tell you that, only because some of them, now this year, 2020, 2021, is not complete, obviously. And I think it is to a degree affected by COVID because we have seen a spike in resignations and retirements due to COVID. And this chart also does not reflect all those, I think there was 40 retirements at Monday night board meeting, and it's based on when they submitted their paperwork to HR. So you will see a difference, like it says 39, we've only had 39 teachers this year. No, not true. Depends when they submitted their paperwork. And you'll see that on another chart coming up. But anyways, what I want you to pay attention to is the yellow across the bottom, if you may. In 2017-18, we had 11.56% teacher turnover. Next year dropped to 9.27. Next year dropped another 2%. Now, we know that 2.52 for 2021 is not an accurate number because we're not there yet, but I think it's important that we are losing less and less teachers. They are staying, and we are even recruiting double-digit teachers years of experience, as I just said. So this is a good chart, and we'll get this updated as soon as the year is over. I'm sorry? I'm sorry. I do that quite often, sir. Exit surveys for teachers and librarians is the next slide. We looked at the exit surveys going all the way back to December 2017 to present. I want to remind everybody exit surveys are voluntary. I wish everybody would fill them out as much as we encourage them to do it. Not everybody does it. But this kind of shows you in buckets 0 to 1 year, why people are leaving, 2 to 5 years, 6 to 9, and then of course 10 plus. So reasons for departures for our teachers and librarians. This chart shows the reason for departure of teachers and librarians by year since 2018-19. And of course, it reflects a continual decline of departures each year. In 18-19, we lost 144, down to 111 the next year, and then 79 the following year to date. Now, on this one here, the reasons for leaving, this one here is going to be different than the exit survey, because exit survey, you're allowed to choose a couple different reasons for leaving. So those numbers can be a little bit inflated. This is coming from the board resignation list, so you'll notice on the board resignation list, it only has one reason for leaving. It's not multiple reasons, although they might have listed multiple in their exit survey. Teacher stipend comparison. This chart shows TASB's comparison of teacher stipends of McAllen ISD versus local districts. So nothing changed on this chart. It's still McAllen ISD down to bottom, 2,000 for a master's degree in the subject field, SPED general, 1,000, 1,200 self-contained, and bilingual, 1,000. And secondary math and science is 2,000. Proposed stipend changes. This is an eye chart, but you should have gotten a copy of the proposed stipend changes in your package, I believe, tonight. And I've asked some directors to be available should you have specific questions things listed in red, and there's 3 pages here, but, get back to the first one. If you have specific questions on any stipend changes, we'll be happy to address those. Any questions on stipend changes?
I was just gonna say that Dr. De Hoyo's already, she just started, but she's got a lot in there already. So thank you so much for all the dyslexia stipends, all that you know, in committee meeting, we gave you our concerns, Trustee Saldivar and myself, that we'd heard from the community, and you addressed them. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and I want to also recognize, if I may, Paula Gonzalez, but she looked at some stipends that hadn't been looked at in like a dozen years, like your ticket takers and things like that. So I think those are equally important. And there was a lot of work in this bad area too. I'm going to move on just for the interest of time. Teacher incentive comparison. This chart shows TASB's comparison of teacher incentives, again, compared with our local districts. So these didn't change. The department chair at the high school and middle school is $1,500. Department chair at the elementary is $400. Mentor teacher is $1,000. Interesting to me on this chart is Donna ISD has a $1,500 signing bonus for certified secondary math and science teachers that are newly hired to the district. Newly hired. They got to be certified. They can't be in no alternative certification program. Proposed staffing guidelines. I'm gonna, here's the list. This is a summary list of staffing guidelines. And again, you should have had a copy of the staffing guideline changes in your package, I believe, from Natalie. Mr. Crounse, are you there, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, would you mind quickly walking through the summary of the proposed staffing guidelines? And I've asked Mr. Crounse to do it because he's the staffing guy and he's been actively involved with the principals. Again, it's student-based and student needs. So go ahead, Mr. Crounse.
Yes, good evening. There are not many changes to the staffing guidelines. The first one that you'll see is at our high school campuses, and that's with our college and career readiness specialist. They are the ones that help the students with their college and career preparation. So we're just going to be going from 1 to 2 per campus. So we're adding that position. Those are funded out of Fund 211. The high school campus testing coordinators, instead of having 2 at each campus, we're looking at 1 per campus. And that was proposed back in the budget savings also. The IB coordinator is actually not an addition to staff. It's really more of a title change. Those people have been listed as teachers, both at IB Lamar and also at De Leon. And so they've had a teacher title, but we want to title them correctly by calling them IB coordinators. And so all it does is just change their position and their job description to fit what they're actually doing rather than being listed as an English or a science teacher. The final one for the high schools with the school improvement clerk, that is actually something that we have been discussing the past couple of days, and that part is not going to happen. So that will be reflected in the board book when we update that. So that one has been eliminated. In middle school, Mr. Miller already talked about the AP and changing the guidelines from 601 for 1 full-time person to 801, which will affect Travis and Brown. We've also discussed a middle school improvement facilitator. Currently, Travis and Brown each have one, but now we're looking at putting 1 per campus. So all the other middle schools will receive a school improvement facilitator, again, funded out of federal funds 211. The testing coordinator and interventionist at the middle schools, that had been situation dependent. We had 3 of those at the middle schools, the larger middle schools, and we're looking at removing those positions. I mentioned the IB coordinator, that goes along with the one at Lamar. Again, a change in title only. And then at the elementary, another adjustment to the AP going from 0 to 100 for a full-time to make that 350 to 800 for a full-time, just making a slight adjustment there. And then other positions we've talked about earlier this year, the instructional assistant, general education, we are removing that position. The instructional assistant behavioral, we are removing that position, and we added earlier this year at the beginning of the semester, the instructional assistant bilingual, 1 per campus, and those are already filled with employees that were already in the district.
Thank you, Mr. Crounse.
I have questions on that slide.
Oh, sorry.
I know the school improvement facilitators are paid out of 211. Is that just middle schools or is that all at every campus? Because we already have, I forget the number, we have 30 already school facilitators. I just remember that was a really high budget item. Their salary was, I mean, they're administrators. And I just thought, when I saw that, I thought, well, heck, for that much money, we should keep all the instructional aides in the classrooms and not do the school improvement facilitators. How many people are we talking?
No, with this, we're talking about only adding 4 school improvement facilitators at the middle schools. We only have 1 at Travis and 1 at Brown, and then each high school, the comprehensive high schools each have 1. So currently there's 5. We're looking at adding 4 more.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes, please. Does anybody have the current budget book for 2021?
I didn't bring it with me, I'm sorry.
I have it. If there's a particular page you want to look, I can bring
I'd
it
like
up.
to go to the page that you and I and Trustee Bella and Trustee Esparza have been referring to from time to time, and if you guide us through where we are when we establish the budget. So that page, yeah, that's it. I have it
Okay.
on my screen. But if you get us to the page of the actual budget, I think it's 200.
What page? Excuse me, what did you want us to look for?
The actual, where it shows the entire budget by function code.
You give me a few minutes, a second. This is last year's budget by function code.
Good. So, looking at that, you're looking at the adopted budget of 2021, which takes effect on July the 1st, 2020. And that amount is $274,615,417. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At that time, when this budget was approved by the Board of Trustees, and that took the effective date of July 1, because it was approved in June of that year, did the district have $274,615,430 issued to the district by state, federal, and local funds to operate.
We did not have the money in cash. We do receive state funding throughout the year on a monthly basis based on a payment schedule they have for the district.
And that is based on, go ahead, I'm sorry, you were
So that is our state funding. Of course, our local funding comes in as it's being generated throughout the year. And when it comes to federal funding, a lot of that is the child nutrition program and some grants that we receive, and those are on a reimbursement basis. So as expenditures occur, then we submit for reimbursements after the fact.
Exactly. So throughout, when we make this projection, and whenever adjustments are being occurring throughout the year, there are budget amendments that occur, and you bring those to the board, and we review them.
Yes, sir.
And there are certain recommendations about where those funds are going to be moved into, and what function and what role that new money is going to be in whatever category the district finds throughout the year as we adapt to a changing situation involving our students.
Yes, sir.
Correct. And so therefore, at the same time we do the budget amendment, you actually have expenditures that we discussed, and that becomes part of the actual that we actually spend. So in any given category, if like we saw recently when you did the explanation, where you projected a certain amount was going to be spent, and if we prepare for this budget, you're showing a lot of the categories in which we did not spend the money.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And is that unique to this year, or is that something that the board and this district and all districts experience throughout the year? And have for year after year after year when it comes to school finance?
That is common.
Very good. So when we make our projections right now, we take into account funds that's almost assured. We're also going to be looking at our average daily attendance.
Definitely.
Definitely, because every 6 weeks that's the determination of the drawdown for the state funding based on the school finance basic funding allowance, plus any others for supplemental or enrichment as well.
Yes, sir.
And so those could change if your attendance drops or your attendance goes up.
Yes, sir.
That's correct. And this district has done a really good job over the last 5-6 years to increase that and narrow between what is budgeted and what is ADA, so that there is no gap, there is no loss in getting the most we can. Because you're never gonna get you're never gonna get the full amount of state funding for your membership. It's only the average daily attendance by every 6 weeks. Is that correct? And then accordingly, you have to adjust your spending and your cost avoidance and everything else. 'Cause that could be.
Yes, sir.
So the point I'm trying to make with this exercise is, like I said earlier, it's no different than any other budget.
You know, like when I was working and we had our budget, so 400 million, whatever, it was up front. I mean, it was allocated to us for, and you know, because you're an accountant and you went through business school and you're taught how finances work. And most businesses, you're allocated a fund and that's how you work, not school districts. It changes and it fluctuates throughout the year at any given time, whether it's a catastrophe occurring or not. The other is the dropout rate. And again, 5, 6, 7 years ago, the dropout rate was what, 4 or 5%. And that has an impact on your funding coming into it. But today, as I understand it, we're probably in the point something, like maybe 0.3, 0.4, 0.5%. I think if memory serves me right, we were about 4% in 5, 6 years ago. But I do agree with you, since Dr. Gonzalez is on board, we've made some significant gains. But somebody correct me if I'm kind of off, but I think before the pandemic, we were around 0.4% was a dropout, which is incredible to be at that rate. Does anybody recall the figure or have a different figure than what I'm saying, you know? Okay. Anybody? I'm correct? All right. Mrs. V has verified that I'm correct on that. And that is important because, again, when you do your budget and if you have a dropout rate that's consistently high, and now you've adjusted for that and you're retaining more of your students so they graduate, that's additional money coming into the district that we otherwise would have lost. And we've made significant gains in that regard, both for the student, for the district, and more importantly for the community. And so that's another area that you're constantly looking at as part of the administration is you want the dropout rate to remain low. You want your attendance in school to be high. And therefore, those are constantly changing. That's why the board gets a report at least twice a month at regular board meetings of where we are in our cost and what our actuals are compared to what we budget. And they never lie out. I mean, it doesn't, right? All right, I belabored that. I just want to make it very clear. And I just want to state that as conservative, and you all know that because I've been here 12 years, I don't say what I just said very lightly if I don't know what I'm talking about. And I know what I'm talking about. And I'm only one member, and we all could feel it differently. We get to a vote, I'll support the vote decision. But I think based on what I'm hearing, what I've seen for the last several years, and more importantly through this time period, I think the administration, you were asking for what a consensus from my standpoint. I would have made the statement, I didn't think we could do it. And so I think we're pretty much right on track on that regard. I do think, again, we're going to need to be looking at campuses and staffing and looking at, you know, if we have a teacher here and a classroom only has 15 students and a teacher over here that has 18, I really think we need to be thinking about how we can consolidate those, because you're paying for 2 teachers when you maybe, and then you multiply that, you could end up in the aggregate of the district about 20 or 25 extra teachers that if you made some adjustment and movement, you wouldn't need. And I think there's that real possibility here if we continue to look at it. Again, thank you very much for everybody's time. And I appreciate your attention and your time to look that up. But I thought that slide was something we should focus on. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Do we have anything else pending?
No, so I'm done with my presentation.
Ms. Richards, you're done too?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Hanlon, for joining us.
We got candy, but we put it out.
No, we can't. Dr. Gonzalez, you want to close it out?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. First and foremost, I'd like to thank our Board of Trustees for always giving us crucial feedback and making sure that we cross our Ts and dot our Is as an administration. I also want to thank the administration for all the hard work that we've put in to get to this point in the budget cycle. So we'll go back from what we've learned from today's conversation and make the appropriate adjustments that we see fit, and then come back to the board at a later date.
Awesome. Any other questions, comments from the board? Not, we'll see you Monday back here, 5 o'clock. We have a regular board meeting, and it will be not online, we'll be in person. So y'all have a good week. Thank you. We'll adjourn at 7:15.